The Indian subcontinent is one of the oldest cradles of human civilization, known for its ethnic and religious diversity, cultural achievements, and unique art. For thousands of years, powerful empires rose and fell here, but the Gupta Empire holds a special place among them, as it gave India its classical golden age. This dynasty, which ruled from the 4th to the 6th century AD, left a legacy of exquisite art, outstanding scholars and poets, as well as significant changes in religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism. So my name is Semyon and welcome to the Amazing History channel, where we tell you about the most interesting moments from the history of the ancient world and the Middle Ages. And in this video, you will learn about India. The Gupta Empire, the greatest state of classical India, its rulers, achievements, and much more. Before I continue, please don't forget to support the channel through sponsorship on YouTube or Patreon. We would also appreciate your likes, subscriptions, and of course, kind comments. Let's get to the topic of this episode. Our understanding of the Gupta Empire is based on two main sources: literary works, such as those by the poet Kalidasa, who is believed to have lived during the Gupta rule, and archaeological findings, including coins and architectural monuments. Thanks to inscriptions on coins, temple art, and Sanskrit inscriptions, historians can reconstruct the chronology of the Gupta rule and the main values of their society. However, it is important to remember that these sources are often biased, as they usually praise the rulers of that era. Therefore, they should be analyzed critically and in an academic context. The origin of the Gupta Empire dates back to the period of fragmentation of the Indian subcontinent after the collapse of the Maurya Empire, which existed from the 4th to the 2nd century BCE. During this transitional period, various dynasties such as the Kushans and the Sakas rose and fell in the northwest of the subcontinent. The Ganges plain was also a scene of constant change, where the power of dynasties such as the Vakatakas and the Kshatrapas would strengthen and then collapse. The influence of the Adivasi peoples, the indigenous tribes of various regions, continued to exist over significant territories. The memory of the Mauryas, who achieved significant unification of India, remained important in the cultural consciousness of rulers, as only they were able to come close to uniting the subcontinent. The Satavahana dynasty, which ruled in central India, continued the tradition of patronizing literature and religion, contributing to the development of Sanskrit as a language of high culture, rather than only for religious ritual. The religious situation in India at that time was very different from today. Buddhism and Jainism, which are now minority religions, were influential among rulers, the nobility, and merchants. Hinduism was also undergoing significant changes at this time. Before our era, the Vedic tradition, or Vaidika, dominated, with worship of many gods such as Indra, the god of thunder, Agni, the god of fire, Varuna, the god of the oceans, and Surya and Chandra, the deities of the sun and moon, according to the Vedic texts. However, in the Dagubsad, the formation of the cults of Vishnu and Shiva began, as well as the creation of texts from the Puranic tradition, such as the Bhagavata Purana and the Vishnu Purana. These new texts began to popularize the concepts of devotion and elevated Vishnu and Shiva to the status of central deities, which foreshadowed the form of Hinduism that would become dominant in the following centuries. This transitional period, rich in new religious movements, occurred at a time when India was divided and on the verge of change. It was at that time that the Guptas took center stage in history, managing to unite a significant part of India and exerting a powerful influence on the cultural and religious heritage of the region. The Guptas founded their empire in Magadha, a region with a rich history, where the great Maurya Empire had arisen several centuries earlier. The rise of the Guptas in the same center of imperial power allowed for parallels to be drawn with the Mauryas, which strengthened the legitimacy of the new dynasty in the eyes of neighbors and subjects. This symbolic connection helped the Guptas present themselves as the legitimate heirs to unifying power over India, since the prestigious past of the Mauryas was associated with a unified and strong state. The founder of the dynasty was probably Sri Gupta, whose reign is believed to have begun around the middle of the 3rd century AD. Although there is little direct evidence from his time, such as coins or inscriptions, he is mentioned in later sources, including the works of Chinese pilgrims, which confirms his role in the establishment of the dynasty. Sri Gupta laid the foundations of the empire by establishing control over small territories in Magadha. His grandson, Chandragupta I, became a more active ruler, significantly expanding the influence of the Guptas through marriages and conquests, including the subjugation of the Naga tribes in central India. It was during his reign that the significant territorial expansion began, as confirmed by coins minted at that time, which depict elegant harpists, archers, and Hindu deities. These symbols reflect Chandragupta III's desire to present himself as a unifying monarch and patron of the arts, as well as a ruler with the ambitions of a conqueror. After Chandragupta IV, the most influential ruler of the Gupta Empire was his son, Samudragupta IV. He became famous as an outstanding warrior and a patron of the arts. Under his leadership, the empire significantly expanded its borders. Samudragupta defeated the western Kshatrapas of the neighboring Vakataka dynasty and defeated the Sakas. According to legend, his body bore the marks of hundreds of battle wounds, which gave Samudragupta heroic qualities. Information about the reign of Samudragupta has been preserved in the form of a eulogistic inscription composed by the poet Harisena and engraved on the same pillar in Allahabad, where King Ashoka of the Maurya dynasty had carved his edicts centuries earlier. This inscription is composed in refined Sanskrit and is a complex work describing the military campaign, the exploits of Samudragupta, his patronage of art and religious institutions, as well as his view of royal power as an exalted and divine mission. Samudragupta used such inscriptions to create and strengthen the image of a Chakravartin, a ruler who brings peace and prosperity. His title Maharaja Raj, that is King of Kings, also emphasized his status, indicating his supremacy over dependent people and rulers. Chandragupta II, the successor of Samudragupta, also known as Vikramaditya, strengthened and expanded the Gupta Empire, achieving significant cultural flourishing. His reign is considered an era of great patronage of the arts, including the Navaratnas, the 9 gems. This was the name given to a circle of outstanding scholars, poets, and philosophers, among whom was the famous poet Kalidasa. Kalidasa, the author of the greatest works who glorified his ruler in exquisite Sanskrit, which was considered the language of the gods. Although the idea of a circle of scholars and poets close to the court appeared before the Guptas, it was this dynasty that made it a popular standard, which was later adopted by dynasties from South Asia to Southeast Asia. In addition, Chandragupta II proved himself to be a successful conqueror, expanding the empire's influence, especially in the northwest, by defeating the western Kshatrapas and annexing important trade centers such as Surat and Ujjain. These conquests strengthened the economic position of the Guptas by opening sea routes and prosperous trade routes to Central Asia and the Mediterranean. This period was described by the Chinese monk Faxian, who traveled across India and noted the justice of the rule, the development of cities, and the favorable attitude towards Buddhism at the court of Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II also actively supported religious diversity. Although he probably personally favored the cult of Vishnu, his support extended to Buddhist and various Hindu temples, demonstrating tolerance towards different faiths. Indian rulers, unlike monarchies with dominant religions, often supported a variety of faiths, and Chandragupta III contributed to this tradition by making donations and land grants to various religious communities, which strengthened the status and prestige of his reign. After the death of Chandragupta II, the throne passed to his son Kumaragupta II. Like his father, he patronized all the major religions, including Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, and continued the tradition of land grants. His reign ensured stability and prosperity for the empire, as well as the strengthening of cultural and religious unity. His successor Skandagupta went down in history as a great warrior, as evidenced by the inscription on the pillar in Bitari, which describes his victory over the Hephthalites who invaded from the northwest. This success, however, required significant resources and efforts to protect the empire's borders. Skandagupta became the last great king of the dynasty, as his reign marked a period when the Guptas still maintained control over their lands and resisted external threats. Later rulers, such as Narasimha Gupta, continued to strengthen the defenses, but no longer had the resources and power that their predecessors possessed. From this point on, the Gupta Empire entered a period of prolonged decline, increasingly shifting to a defensive stance until it eventually lost its territories under the pressure of external invasions and internal crises. Now, having completed the overview of the rulers of the Gupta dynasty, let's delve into the characteristics of the society that flourished under their rule. The period of their rule became a golden age for Indian science, art, and literature. It was during this time that the great mathematician and astronomer Aryabhata worked, whose contributions became crucial for the development of algebra and trigonometry. He is often credited with the first accurate conceptualizations of the number zero and the form of the decimal system, which had a revolutionary impact on mathematics. In astronomy, Gupta scholars often relied on Greco-Roman works, adapting them to local realities and making their own clarifications and additions, creating a unique Gupta tradition of scientific thought. The Gupta era is also known as the dawn of Sanskrit literature, which became widespread thanks to the generous patronage of the kings. Outstanding poets such as the already mentioned Kalidasa became famous for works created in a style unique to that time. In the inscriptions of that period, for example, on the Ashoka pillar, both the literary talents of the era and the ideology and prestige of the kings are reflected, which gave the Guptas strong political influence over the territory of India. Literary genres such as kavya, a style of highly artistic prose and poetry, also experienced a renaissance, in which refined metaphors and complex forms were used. The Gupta era was also a time of flourishing for the Indian philosophical tradition, which was developed by all 6 major schools of Hindu thought: Vedanta, Mimamsa, Samkhya, Yoga, Vaisheshika, and Nyaya. It was during this time that many philosophers and thinkers systematized and deepened the ideas that became classical in Indian philosophy and remain important in modern Indian culture. The Gupta Empire is sometimes seen as a period of decline for the peoples of the Indian subcontinent. However, modern historians question this point of view. Studies show that most cities continued to remain dynamic economic and cultural centers. Despite the empire's focus, the Guptas emphasized agriculture and mineral extraction. The foundations of the economy and social structure were indeed made up of agricultural communities and settlements in mining regions. But this did not mean the decline of urban society. Instead, the Guptas organized a complex system of governance, in which taxes and administrative functions were often delegated to the local elite and religious figures, who played a key role in managing the land and maintaining order. The Gupta administration system was institutionally flexible and relied on decentralized control. Local princes and rulers who submitted to the Guptas were granted significant administrative powers. An effective network of ministers and advisors, along with a system of delegating functions to local tribes and religious leaders, allowed the Gupta dynasty to govern a vast territory without the need for strict centralization. The Guptas also widely used marriage alliances as a means of diplomacy. Numerous marriages of dynasty rulers strengthened alliances with neighboring kingdoms, helping to maintain a balance between military campaigns and economic ties. This multifaceted system of governance and diplomacy allowed the Guptas to create a prosperous and stable empire, known for its cultural and philosophical heritage. Gupta art absorbed the traditions of artistic movements. The schools of Mathura, Gandhara, and Varanasi left their mark on Gupta sculptures and reliefs, which are known for their refinement and ornamentation. During this period, depictions of Hindu deities such as Vishnu and Shiva became increasingly common, coinciding with the revival and spread of Hinduism. For example, the Dashavatara temple in Gaudiya Deogar, dedicated to Vishnu, contains carved scenes where Vishnu is reclining on the serpent Shesha and his consort Lakshmi is depicted sitting at his feet. This depiction of Vishnu as a peaceful ruler symbolizes tranquility and prosperity, which were important for Gupta society. Alongside Hindu monuments, Buddhist and Jain reliefs and statues of bodhisattvas and tirthankaras also found their place in the Gupta Empire, indicating religious tolerance and diversity. Temples and religious monuments often served not only as spiritual centers, but also fulfilled practical functions. The Udaigiri complex, for example, included water supply systems, which indicates the important role these structures played in irrigating agricultural lands. Udaigiri is also famous for the statue of Varaha, the avatar of Vishnu in the form of a boar man who, according to myth, saved the earth from the flood. This statue, facing the rising sun, symbolizes both spiritual power and the temple's role as a place for managing water resources on which the well-being of the local population depended. I have already mentioned that the Guptas supported all the major religions of India. Many temples and religious communities received state support, including universities such as Nalanda, which, although under Buddhist influence, flourished as an academic center that promoted the exchange of knowledge. However, Hinduism, particularly the Brahmin caste, continued to hold a dominant position in religious and social life since the Guptas themselves were adherents of Hinduism. The Brahmins, who performed administrative and astrological functions, received extensive land grants and tax-exempt villages, which strengthened their status in society and influenced the economic life of the empire. During the Gupta rule, the old Vedic pantheon gradually gave way to Vaishnavism and Shaivism, where Vishnu and Shiva were revered as the supreme deities. Monarchs often associated their royal roles with the sacred aspects of Vishnu as the protector and Shiva as the destroyer. Sacred texts such as the Puranas, which developed during this time, reflected the new political and cultural realities, spreading ideas that contributed to the consolidation of power. In addition, other currents of Hinduism continued and developed, such as Shaktism, associated with the worship of the goddess Devi, as well as the less widespread cults of Surya and Skanda. The last rulers of the Gupta dynasty faced political difficulties and decentralization, which were connected both with internal dynastic conflicts and with invasions from the northwest. After the death of Skandagupta, their power gradually weakened, and by the end of the 6th century AD, the empire had disintegrated. Although the political power of the Guptas disappeared, their cultural and religious legacy left an indelible mark on the history of India, which endures to this day. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.